Welcome to Contempo. I am your host, Roberta Markbright. We will be visiting with two artists who created Art Encounter, an organization that brings the appreciation of art to the public. Ellen Kamerling studied art therapy at the Adler Institute in Chicago and earned a bachelor's degree at Roosevelt University. She has been exhibiting her own art since 1976. Welcome, Ellen. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's nice to be here, thanks.
Joanna Pinsky earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, and worked and studied in Paris, France. She has been exhibiting her work since 1974. Welcome, Joanna. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here.
Thank you. Why did you create Art Encounter?
Well, I guess the overall reason would be that it was a time of minimal art. It was in the 1976, 1977, in that period. And it was a time when people really wanted to know, when are they going to put something on the canvas? And both of us as painters ourselves felt that art was very little talked about, and that people could go to movies and talk about movies, they could, go to dance theater, but that somehow, unless you were an artist, it wasn't all right to talk about art. And so we started Art Encounter in the hope that we could create a dialogue.
We also felt that a lot of people had no access to the art, and particularly children and older people, and we had kids in the schools, and art was often being cut out of the schools at that point. So we wanted to bring art into the schools. Again, even where there are art programs, there seldom are any that really stress an understanding of art. They're just doing, not learning to look at what's contemporary.
Well, how do you bring art to older people and to children? What do you do?
Well, we started out with our own artwork and the artwork of friends, and started bringing traveling art exhibits into schools and senior centers and getting people engaged in a dialogue and hoping that we could begin to answer the questions, you call that art? And it was a very successful approach in that lively dialogues were created, and we were really able to engage people through a team teaching approach.
Now this approach is very unusual, isn't it?
It is, and it's one of the parts of Art Encounter that we really enjoy doing the most, and are currently training other people to work with us in this area. In team teaching, we work together and develop questions about the art that we're viewing. And then we ask each other all the questions we can think of about an artwork. And then we go through a process, therefore, of analyzing the work. And when we meet with the public, we do the same sort of thing with them. So there's a constant interactive dialogue. And that's really what makes Art Encounter unique, no matter what kinds of programs we're doing.
How has this unusual approach been? How have the people reacted?
Well, wonderfully. It's a non-authoritarian approach. And so rather than telling people what an artwork is about, we are posing all the questions, and people discover on their own and validate their own perceptions and really gain access to the artist's intentions through discovery. And it's, I think, very different than sitting and waiting for someone to tell you what it's about, and a lot harder to do.
Do you find that the public is very responsive and knowledgeable
What's
about art?
really interesting is that the approach works, whether people feel that they have a lot of information about art, or whether they've had no experience with art at all. And that's what's so exciting, because we all have the ability to perceive. We just don't always know how to get there. So the questions give the participants a chance to say, hey, oh yes, this is how I feel about that. And it opens doors in that way.
It does something else that I think is interesting too, and that's create a sense of community between the people that are engaged in the dialogue. So it builds a certain respect for the opinions of others. It helps people. Sometimes it's frustrating because you really have to listen to other viewpoints than your own, and the ones that you learn that people really do perceive differently. That some people look at a work of art and are attracted to color, others line, others content. And it's fascinating to share those perceptions. So I think as well as having people gain access to their own way of seeing, their own unique way of seeing, it also helps people have a respect for other people's particular way of seeing, and I think that it's exciting.
One of the things that people get frustrated with sometimes is they'll say, well, we've been talking, but this is okay, but what does the artist think? What does the artist mean by that? And we do visit artist studios, and the artist will frequently say, after we've talked about it, gee, this was really great, and the people will say, well, were we right? And the artist will say, you got a tremendous amount. And they'll say, but what about this and that? And the artist will say, well, I really learned more about my own work from you, that the artists themselves don't always know everything because part of the process is intuitive and an artwork is different for each viewer. So while we accept that, and I think that people who come with us really enjoy that, sometimes it's a little bit hard for some people to accept that there is not one way to see a work of art and that even the artist doesn't have the one way.
We also do private collections, and we got to doing private collections as a result of people asking, but who would buy this stuff? And so we took them to homes where people bought this stuff. And I can remember one collection where the person had a wonderful collection of abstract expressionism, and we got people all involved in this dialogue, and the collector walked by afterwards and said, gee, I didn't know that was in there. That's amazing. I'll never walk by that painting again and look at it in the same way. So I think that things happen that are unpredictable, that are exciting, that are dynamic, and it's this vitality and the sharing that really is what Art Encounter is about.
That's very wonderful. We're going to be seeing some photographs about what you're talking about your work and your projects, and the first picture will be coming up shortly. You do gallery walks as well.
We do. We have one coming
Okay.
up.
Oh, now what is
But
that?
usually the first Saturday of the month.
Who is that?
That is Cloud Eagle on a trip to Santa Fe. And he's working in marble, and it was just a marble. We went to the place that is a unique place that he lives and works, and he shared his process. And on the same trip, this was
the Pouillet Cliffs. And this was, this year we went to Santa Fe for the 7th year in a row. That we find the area so inspiring and there's so much to do that we go back every year. These trips are really important because they help support the programs that we do in schools and senior centers, which are the major thrust of our activities.
And this is Sonia Bloomdahl in her studio in Seattle, Washington. And we've done a trip now, 2 trips to Seattle. And Sonia's a marvelous woman who has really revolutionized the studio glass movement by getting in there as a woman and doing the whole project herself. And we like to expose people to all artists, different people in different places.
Even in Illinois, this is a house in a Santa Fe style house in Illinois, and it's owned by John and Sarah Bess Cahill, and we have visited their wonderful collection in this house, which was imported stone by stone from Santa Fe and built here, but we've used this as a way of introducing people to the Santa Fe feeling.
And these are some of the children who we do this travel program for, because we really are trying to earn money through the travel program to support the programs in schools and senior centers here in Illinois. And watching a child discover the joy of making art is all about what Art Encounter is about.
This is a quilt that was made from individual drawings that were, the kids knew that they were going to be putting this quilt together here in East Prairie School in Skokie. And we worked in that school with actually children throughout the whole school and developed particular projects for each grade level. This one involved looking at geometry and art.
Because we worked with kids in schools and then people in senior centers, it became apparent after a while that there was a need to do programs that would draw these 2 different generations together. And so we started a whole series of intergenerational programs where art was used as a vehicle of communication.
Here is our two people from the St. Francis Extended Care Facility in Evanston and the Chute Middle School. And the Chute children work as volunteers, in a sense, to do the art projects with the seniors. It really is important in helping the kids build self-esteem. That works actually both ways.
Oh dear, here's the beginnings, when my hair was brown in the background, next to a painting that we, in our backyard, which is, our backyards, which is where we really started.
That's
and
wonderful.
Started with neighborhood kids and our own kids, and that must be 1978.
And nature and art together in one place.
Right, that
Yeah.
was a wonderful time. And this is, these are a couple of senior citizens who are working on a clay project. We do bring programs into senior citizen facilities, both hands-on workshops and also traveling art exhibits.
I think that was Casa Central. We did programs in the Logan Park area, and we've really tried to reach out to all different sections of the city. I
Yeah.
recognize that.
That is a detail from one of my paintings, and it is shows some different materials that I've been using, texture, sawdust, and sand, and it's really what I've become interested in in our old houses and barns, but you're really only seeing a detail of a painting that is shaped. It's a shaped canvas.
And that is a Little Red Riding Hood series that I've been working on, and interested the older I get in the fairy tales and all the morals and messages that we've been given. So I'm trying to take a new look at some of the myths and tales that are embedded in our psyche, and I'm currently working on Snow White.
Oh my, we want to see that next. Well, now you studied at the Adler Institute. You studied art therapy. How does that help you do what you do now?
I was very inspired by Sadie Dreikers and some workshops she did and some things that she was doing at Children's Memorial Hospital, and just took some classes with her where the workshops that she did had an impact on some of the programs that we've created at Art Encounter.
How did they have an impact?
Well, again, very interactive and non-judgmental. I think that those were two things that were the underpinnings of her programs. And at the time, art therapy was really a brand new field, and we don't use it as art therapy at Art Encounter because we're not trying to analyze the people or to use art in a therapeutic way. But the kinds of things that were developed there had real long-lasting kind of effect on me, and that gave me a lot of courage to create programs that would have those two elements, interactive and non-authoritarian.
Do you both find that the people that you meet find that art is freeing for them? I would think it would be.
It certainly is. It gives people a chance to express themselves, both first in discovering how they see as viewers, and then we also work with hands-on projects so that people can discover their own creativity. We also have a class for artists that is a critique session, and that gives artists a chance to really form community, because artists are so often working in total isolation. And this way they have a chance to really discover each other's work and to look at work that's different from their own and to develop a support group for each other.
I was reading an article recently where Jane Alexander said that the new head of the NEA, that she wanted art to be a part of every single person's life. And I think that when I read it, I said, me too. And I really feel that Art Encounter attempts to make art a vital part of people's lives, and it is people that wouldn't ordinarily have access, as well as people who are already deeply involved. And that art has that capacity of being a bridge to both the inner self and the outer world.
The older people, it's really, really thrilling to see them, because sometimes they've spent their lives working and they haven't had a chance to discover this other aspect of themselves. And it's just beautiful. It's also been interesting because a lot of the older people who come with us on programs are people who are very adventurous. They go to artist studios and private collections. They get there on their own. And they have often served as being very inspiring to us because of their courage and their own creative spirit.
I'm going to tell a little story about it early on when we started doing artist studios. Well, first we took people from senior centers to galleries. That was one of the ways we began. And the belief was that people wanted to remain a part of the cultural life of their community rather than just have projects that were brought into them. So we took, and the dealers weren't too thrilled about it, and in would come this group of people, and they weren't going to buy art, and we would ask all these questions and get them involved. And then somebody said, well, who makes this stuff? So we took them to an artist studio. I'm thinking in particular of Alan Nider, who was painting on shower curtains. And the next question was, but who buys this stuff? And along with it was, what does your mother think about you doing this? I mean, in a way, what Joanna and I did was give people permission to really explore their feelings about the whole process. From that, we wound up taking people to private collections so they could see who bought that stuff. And it's just built and built, and now we attract a much wider audience, but the questions really remain pretty much the same. People get a chance to get behind the scenes and watch the creative process and get to know the people who buy it, and that's a big part of it.
Do you find a lot of the people that you know that come to you start their own careers in art?
That happens often.
It does.
And that is exciting because they look for a while and then they say, wait a minute, what would it be like to try my hand at this? And so they
buy their
begin to do it.
Piece of art.
They
That's
start
happened
collecting.
too.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
that's thrilling. That's thrilling too.
Do you find
to
that the
see that.
collectors you approach are very willing to let you come into their homes?
Most of them are, because collectors are artists. They're artists in the way that they display their art, in the kind of work that they buy. They have a particular eye, and many of them really feel almost an obligation to share it with the public, as well as, I think, a real enjoyment of sharing the experience that they love so much with viewers. And then, of course, they get our reactions, so that's kind of fun.
Do you feel that everybody can paint? I've heard this before.
Everybody can paint, but there are different ways. There are certainly...
Everybody can't paint well. I hate to use a moral judgment on it, but...
Well,
or am I wrong?
Everybody can learn something. I think
no one
they
will
can
forbid them. I mean, it's certainly not us. But I think that an artist has a different intention than, I think an artist is using a medium in order to express some inner thing that's really important to them, and I think that's a commitment.
But that could be true for anyone, but the word commitment is what's crucial here. It's the commitment to do it, to even repeat it, to put yourself on the line to show it. And all of that's part of it. It's not just going in and saying, oh gee, this is nice and I'm going to put this on the wall. So although everybody does have the artistic, I think, an ability to express themselves, yes, there are degrees. And there are just, I think what artists help us do too is really see in a new way.
But that's a different, it's an interesting question because there really are different parts to that question, and I think art used in an art therapy kind of a way is a wonderful way for people to explore things, but that doesn't mean that they want to be an artist or that they're going to do that all their life. Or
sometimes in an art therapy way that works because we live in such a verbal society that people can discover something different about themselves. They don't realize quite what they're saying perhaps when they put it on paint, use paint and paper. So they're using a different language. And so, that gives them a kind of, perhaps a different freedom. That's a little bit different from just exploring through a visual means. Of course, all art is therapy to some extent.
Yes, it really is. You were going to say something.
Well, I think one of the things I've become very aware of over the years is that there is a visual language and that people don't feel they have access to it after they've been told in school that they can't draw or that they're not good at it.
It's horrible.
And so they really stop looking and they wait for somebody else to tell them what is good or bad instead of developing the means to talk about it and trusting their own perceptions. And so I think that's really an important loss, thing that we lose, that Art Encounter tries to rebuild.
Do you feel that children should be graded in art?
Absolutely not. I think that's terrible. I really think that's awful. The other thing is who's grading, because that differs, you know, for everybody. It's always subjective. And then again, art in schools so often is perceived as, can you draw? Rendering is what's good. And of course, art involves so many other skills.
We also do workshops with teachers and try to help them gain access to a visual language so that they can say something other than that this is good or bad, or I like it or I don't like it. And so we really have developed a whole way of looking at art and questions to ask while looking at art that broadens people's scope in that area.
Currently, in fact, we're working on a project with Lincoln Park High School in Chicago, and this is a partnership in the arts group project with several different arts organizations funded by Marshall Fields and the Prince Charitable Trust. And we are working on a long-range 5-year plan as to how to integrate art into the curricula. So we're working directly with teachers, but in addition, we're really trying to make Lincoln Park High School a real center for the arts and all of the arts. So it's very exciting and very, very challenging.
How do you work with corporations? I know you do have a lot of connections with corporations. What are your projects with them?
Well, we have developed a program for corporations that takes people to galleries after hours and involves them in a dialogue about current shows, and these usually are accompanied by catered dinners or cocktail parties, and it's a way of people entertaining people that they want to within, we've done it mostly with law firms actually, and that's a real challenge because it's really a challenge to get a conversation going between the different people who work together during the day and who are going to be asked their reactions and feelings to what they're seeing. And again, it's you know, a different kind of a rapport is built during these.
We also like to do the same kind of program with corporations that do have art collections. Often their employees are working with art around them, and some of them like the work, some of them say, again, do you call that art? But they haven't had a real opportunity to share it and to discover what the ideas are. So that gives us a really good opportunity to bring people together, which is really what Art Encounter is.
I'm going to get back to the law firms for just a minute in that lawyers who have been trained to say certain things or have been trained in school to give the right answers, I think they're our hardest group in some ways and have to be reassured that this isn't a deposition and that there's nothing that's going to happen and just kind of give them free range. And very often they say, this is the hardest evening that I've had, and yet it's very rewarding and challenging.
They do loosen up and they have a good time.
Do they? I mean,
oh, yes.
And do you think they're enlightened as?
I sure hope so. What happens often when we have people who are new to Art Encounter on regular programs such as our monthly gallery walks is that they'll be quiet for the first time and then they'll hear, well, everybody else is participating. And the second time, they might as well have been there forever because they do join in. So with the lawyers, by the end of the evening, they usually are comfortable, and all you need is a couple to get it going. So some people will take the chance.
In our team teaching approach, we often disagree. And so that helps other people also trust their own perceptions and say what they want. And it's another reason not to have a single person, you know, one person or a more authoritarian point of view.
That's wonderful. What are your further goals for Art Encounter?
Well, one of the things that we're really interested in doing is creating a mentor institute for the arts that would kind of pull together some of the different areas of the organization, but would particularly celebrate the lives of older people and bring older people and younger people together using art as a means of enhancing the communication.
And we've been doing this for 16 years now, and as we get older, I think there's also a belief that art inherent in the creative process somewhere is a wonderful, vital force, and that it can be inspiring to the lives of other people, not just artists.
What do you each get out of what you do? Is that a big, deep question?
Very little free time.
Very little free time, right?
It's an honest answer.
What I get out of it is it keeps me looking and thinking. It also keeps me in contact with other people because, as I said earlier, just doing my own painting can be very isolating, but here we're constantly challenged. We're constantly challenged to look at work that's not our own, to think about it, to discuss it, to face ideas that we might have walked out of if we didn't have to lead an art encounter the next day.
That's
so
wonderful.
It's stimulating.
What about you, Ellen?
Well, I think I agree with that, and I think that there's more. I have more conviction than ever about the importance of art in people's lives, and the ability to be able to bring that to people is tremendously rewarding on all levels.
When you were each growing up, did you have any idea you'd be doing what you're doing now?
None in that regard. Art, yes. From kindergarten
Really?
on, I was told, oh, you're going to be an artist. And my mother really said, oh, you should be an artist when you grow up. You can always paint, and no matter how old you get, you can always do it. And I loved art. I loved art. But I never thought I'd work in an organization, ever. I mean, I still can't believe it.
I probably knew I would work in an organization because I was the middle child of a large family and have sisters that are all involved in the arts as well. And so that part isn't nearly as surprising to me. But I also, very early on, lived in Arizona and saw a mountain change color and thought that, at sunset, the gradated color, and thought that it was inside the mountain itself, that color was changing. And I think that there's a magic about art that has, continued to inspire me, I guess.
One more thing, your project at the University of Illinois, what about that project that you're going to be doing?
The trip that we're going to be taking, well, this is a back-to-school weekend that we're very excited about. It'll be February 12th, is it? February 12th and 13th. And we are going down to the University of Illinois, where we will be meeting the heads of both the painting and sculpture departments, and looking at a special project that Sarah Krepp, who's the head of the painting department, has done with another artist, Barbara Kendrick, at the museum. They're doing a sort of installation project, and we will be looking at the art at the university and meeting all sorts of people down there. And then the next day we'll be visiting the Illinois State University.
Thank you both so much. This has been so much fun and so enlightening. We could talk for another half hour. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. And thank you, and we'll see you next time. Bye.